we did circles, and when we did circles, there were a couple times we had to use completing the square, the plus box. Well, for parabolas to go from standard to vertex form, you also do plus box, but parabola is the only one that's different than the rest. The other ones are pretty the same except the last step. So for parabolas, you're never going to move anything over to the x side because the x has to be alone and it already is. So we're not going to mess it up and put something over there with it that we just have to get rid of later. But what we do is we rewrite the equation as x equals 3/4 y squared plus 6/4 y, and then skip a step and then plus 3/4. Okay? You just move the number over a little bit and make room for him. Before you're going to complete this square, the y squared or x squared, the term that has a square on it, has to be naked. It cannot have anything other than a 1, positive 1 in front of it. So what you're going to do first is you're going to do the x equals. We're going to take out that 3/4, and that is y squared plus 2y. Does everybody understand why it's plus 2y? And now we're going to do our plus box. And then we have plus 3/4 minus box. So these are a little squirrely. And by the way, the ones you have for homework are mainly this squirrely kind because you're in pre-cal now, so we crank it up. When you did this in Algebra 2, if you did, or in Trig, it would have been a little bit lighter than this. So when we complete the box, what do? We take 2 divided by 1 and square it, which is a 1. But over on the other side, we don't put a 1. We put 3/4 times 1.
Well, wouldn't that be?
So, what I've done so far, I have factored out the 3/4 from the first two terms and added a plus box. To get the plus box on the left, you do the b divided by 2 squared. So 2 divided by 2 squared is 1, right? But what you have to, we've added 1 into the left side, but also we have this 3/4 on the outside. So we really added 3/4 because 3/4 times 1 is 3/4. So whatever you do on one side of the equation, you have to put on the other side. But remember I told you not to go to the other side of the equation? So for parabolas, whatever you do there in the first part, you undo in the second part. Because you can't add something to an equation willy-nilly. We're just changing the look, but we're not changing the value. So I've added 3/4 to the first part. We've got to subtract 3/4 so it stays even. So the equation is still an equation. Okay? So now we factor. We have x equals 3/4, and then we factor this. It's always going to be this guy here, y, that sign there, plus, and the square root of that guy, 1 squared, and it's going to be plus 0. First step is factor out that 4 out of the first two terms, not the third term, and add a plus box, then add the 43 minus box. So now we find our plus box, and Trey's already told us he loves finding plus boxes. So can anybody help me find that plus box? What is it going to be? 9. What's half of 6 squared?
-3. All right.
It's, yeah, -3 times -3 is 9. And what do I put in the other box?
You multiply 9 times 4.
Yep, so we put a 36. So now we factor. And it's this guy here, this sign, and the square root of that. So that becomes y minus 3 squared. And that is plus 7 maybe?
Yeah.
And we're done. All right, so now we have y equals, first thing we do is take out the -1, and we have x squared minus 4x plus box, and then we have -6.
Wait, wouldn't that be a +4 because we have the negative on the outside?
So now we find the plus box, and that's 4 divided by 2 is 2, squared is a 4. But what I really added was a -4 because of this and this, right? So now we put a +4 over here. That's a case where it's a plus box.
And would that 4 be the other box?
Yes, but because it's positive because we really added a negative number on the left, the first piece.
Right.
So it's the opposite of whatever you did on the first one. So now we factor and we have y equals negative x minus 2 squared minus 2.